ease of access wise it loses because it isn't significant. And so with what torque is something that is dealing with friction and going against the grain, but then it does so with rotationals, and so it starts to hyperplane, over going against the grain, so it doubles over it in symmetry because it starts picking up angular momentums from going against the grain because it sucks into its central core centripetal force. What resonance is, it's acoustics. It does the same thing, but just with double jumping the material it came out from, and then the material that it's being shot over starts vibrating, and then the vibration picks up the vibrating of where it came from, and it just angularly resonates off each other, making it go really light quick. But if you're combining torque and resonance together, this is something what you can get as known as the predictability of atomic structures. The more that an atom has the following two: a photoelectric effect and then a Brownian motion. Brownian motion is something when there's a congealing of solids, and so then they look more fluid-like. Photoelectric effect is when you're dealing with metallics or making something energetic enough to be conductive as metal would. Because if you do that, then there's a certain amount of brushback or ricochet that the metallic structure will pulse out each time. And so if you have an atom decaying or being stable, it's constantly a photoelectric effect or Brownian motion to the molecule it's in. So if that's all you're doing is just dialing in the predictability of that, that is one way of centralizing power, ease of access, just to get extra vacation time. So I'm gonna describe, and it's not gonna be favorable. So if you wanna just like not watch, this is gonna be pretty extraneous. If you've got what is comfortable enough to live for, let's say, 2.5 years, just built off of a whole bunch of collateral. So you can have 2.5 years of damage and not have anything bad happen, just because you know you've got a little bit extra to give out in the end to make sure that you have the right lane. This is done in calling off a pandemic, is just as important as calling it in. If you know the timing of that, you're able to throw in all you can at the very end to make up for any rough start. Now, this is something that God would be doing if you try as hard as you can, and then always at the very end, when it looks like you hadn't had enough to cover the task, he gives you a little bit extra. And that's, his secret weapon that I've kind of learned. But the more that that's being imitated with fiat currency, or a whole bunch of money that has just been rendered up from a free market that you piggybacked on, and that's your saving grace, then it could be just as though you're playing God with weighing the odds in your favor. And this is something I know is apparent because all the world leaders, the World Economic Forum, the Davos Group, Club of Rome, United Nations have all met, and they have suggested that they get to say what is in a state of emergency. And so then they voted amongst themselves, and they all get that inclination. Well, now we can declare globally what is an emergent state. And the president of the United States was like, that's radical, because all these constitutional rights I can't take away from citizens. However, with my executive branches, when things are international, I can go above and beyond what is constitutionally prohibited without ever being told not to. So that's one thing that is like taxes, how the IRS would go after people who are not major corporations because it's low-hanging fruit, and unless attorneys are called, they won't back off because it's easier to collect and make up stuff through loopholes with. And it's just more corporations, when they're following the same protocol, they all get a piece of the pie. And I'm trying to like humble myself to stay in the center. It's just because like there's all these mom and pop shops, and like if they're done, despite their limited resources, if it's just, you know, like in these cringe locations, it's almost as though you would want to like give your money to major corporations in order not to deal with like their little hippie establishments. And that's a real like realistic point of view where they don't have the skills to have that brushed up upon, and that's extremely leftward thinking. So with all this like torque and resonance and trying to come out in the center, like there's definitely like a neutral ground if you're being genuine. But this is going to be super abstract. It has to do with coffee. If you've got a low amount of sugar, you can add in chocolate chips at the bottom. And if you're doing a drip coffee, you bang a whole bunch of coffee grains together in order to get a whole bunch of oil within the grains going about. And then you pour the grains into the filter. If you have an abundance of water and an abundance of creamer, you can pour out the filters after just one pour over instead of continuously straining with the water dripping through it the grains after they've been pulled through as strong as they could in the first pour. So doing a whole bunch of like small ones instead of one just big one is a ratio that is more fine-tuned if you're doing little parts. And then if you're doing that and throwing away all the stuff that would be just residual, you can have a cup on the side that has the last one, because of course you want to hurry. So with the last one you let strain all the way. That's an extra cup as a remainder on the side, and it probably is going to be more watered down. That's the key word than the first small ones that you threw away early. So with that remainder cup, you then can add to the main vessel if you wanted it to be watered down. But no, of course, you've got extra, so you pour pour out half of it, half of the remainder cup. And this is what is in fluid dynamics. The midpoints of fluid are always more concentrated, but pouring out half the cup, you'll be able to get that. So I'm trying to come out in the middle. It's just when Elon Musk said he's been in the middle the whole time. It's just the left has fallen so far off the cliff that now he's considered right, or the right side, right wing. But how about the left wing? Their argument would be we all need to take care of each other. You know, who's going to argue something like that? But when it's to the degree of a license free, how many doctors would be taking care of only as much as they're willing to put out there without having a license be taken for caring too much? And it's just the same degree as when they say doctors in law. Well, law and health are two different things, and when you're intermitting them, stuff that comes out of the blue or out from the woodwork